Hey, welcome back, Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel. And we got Teddy here and the boys in the background. We're going to be reading chapter 7 tonight, and I'll give you a recap on 6. But I want to tell you, I was at the cabin this weekend. And the last chapter I talked about installing the barrels, the double burner barrel system in the bathhouse. So that got installed, and I went last weekend to test it. So I made a fire in the bottom barrel, and these were like reclaimed barrels, which I found out. I thought they were new barrels, but they must have been reclaimed. The stench from the burning, from when the paint heated up, it burned off on the barrels, and it was so chemically you couldn't be in the bathhouse. So I spent a day and a half keeping the fire going so the barrels paint would burn off. The next day, I filled the tank with water. I got it boiling, and I went to open up the hose to let it drain out. And I went, this water looks a little yellow. I put my hand under it, and I went like this, and it was oily. So those tanks must have had oil in them. So I had to drain that tank, refill it, get it boiling, and put Dawn dish soap in there, get another boil going, and then I drained the tank. So I spent a whole weekend up there seasoning the tanks. Didn't get a chance to take a bath. I'm going back next week. We'll see what happens. All right, I'm going to put Teddy down because he's going to go in the corner and play with Arturo. Bye. See you in a minute. And I want to recap chapter 6. I was accepted into the Mendocino Arts Center, where I studied there from September until May, which is really cool. And there's a section in the book that talks about my art studies. And then in May, the rent on my apartment like quadrupled because it's a tourism town. So I'd spend the summers up at my cabin, up at the log cabin. And this chapter 7 talks about returning in May, the end of May, after a season of school. And this is what I walked into. In late May, before returning to spend the summer at the cabin, I mailed a note to Dan Gray. Remember, Dan Gray was the guy who helped me buy this crummy old truck. The note said, please leave my truck in the meadow with the keys under the seat. This Ford was my first truck, a beast of pistons, points, and rods, as problematic to steer as it was to upkeep. I named it Tank because it could tackle stretches of road, sure to torque axles, puncture oil pans, and crack mufflers of slider chassis. It is the truck I use for hauling what the Datsun can't manage. Remember, I sold the Gremlin and I bought like a used tiny Datsun truck. Dan Gray was an ex-logger with a perpetual lopsy grin, gratis of a Doug fur kickback, a disfiguring accident, pretty much concluding his full-time profession behind a chainsaw. Surgeons patched and pounded his cheeks, chin, and nose back into place. Still, his face was wrecked. Like Tank, he was a lug of dents and reliable most of the time. I'd known the man as long as I'd owned the truck. Beyond those misaligned cheekbones, Dan was a genuine guy who sold used things to cobble together a living. Bargaining over a draw knife one summer is how I met him. The same day he convinced me to buy a second-hand beater. I paid this courtesy back by letting him drive Tank while I was away, and he was supposed to leave it parked in the meadow before May rolled into June. Maybe he never checks his mail, I think, as dust powders the little truck's eggshell green paint job on the last stretch of road. On this bluebird day, before switching off the ignition and parking below the cabin, I'm swearing at the sight before me. 5-gallon plastic storage containers are upended below the porch steps, trounced and gashed open. Red wheat, mung beans, soy, white rice, long brown rice, corn, wheat groats, rye berries, and powdered milk speckle the grounds in pecks and mounds. A year's worth of food that my Mormon neighbors had advised me on how to store is mixed among lady slippers and tender yellow stalks. Dozens of buckets of legumes and grains, 2 25-pound tins of honey, and 2 containers of powdered milk are strewn about the hillside. I shuffle through the mess, scale the hand-hewn steps, and unlatch the door. Inside, everything is exactly as I left it. The ivory linen tablecloth draped over the maple dinette is stationed beneath the window. The matching rocker is sitting before the wood stove, and the tamarack pole ladder is leading into the loft. I open the windows, sweep out a few mouse turds, and unspool cobwebs from the corners. In the loft, I make up a foam mattress bed with Tweety bird sheets, faded as my copy of The Prophet. Then haul buckets of water from the creek, split wood, trim kerosene lampwicks, and lay a fire. The rest of the afternoon finds me on the woody end of a pointy shovel and steel-fanged rake, scoring grains and legumes into piles and replacing what is salvageable into holy containers, restocking them again beneath the cabin. If you didn't figure out, bears got underneath the cabin and they got into my food storage, which was 5-gallon plastic cans stuck or contained into brand new 32-gallon garbage cans. The bears dragged them out, jumped up on the barrels, popped out the plastic containers, and then gnawed off the tops. So that's what I was looking at. After a long day reclaiming food stores, unpacking the truck, and stowing a summer's worth of supplies, I'm relaxing in front of the fire when commotion on the porch upends my respite. I'm not expecting company because it's well after sundown and everyone I know in these parts goes to bed after the sun sets in order to wake before it rises again. Unfolding myself from the rocker, I stand and stare out the window to see my open-mouthed reflection and a bear, the very first I've seen here, black as the night it retreats into, too scared to scream, to grasp, or even to elicit, "Oh shit." I back away, scale the ladder up, then pull rung by rung into the loft. I do not climb back down to blow out the lamps or even to pee outside, a necessity I accomplished inside a mason jar emptied of pencils and pens. In the morning, cracking open the door, then cautiously stepping onto the porch, I bang the fire poker against a metal waste can until I am sure the coast is clear or deafened by my racket. Then attend to the grain containers, again ransacked from underneath the porch. By noon, what is left of my resalvaged stores are inside patched plastic tubs, and I drive the little truck to town in search of its big brother. "Hey!" Dan Gray sees me under the cottonwood tree, shading the curb where I am standing next to Tank. A broken smile on his face, this lopsided lumberjack lumbers across the lawn in front of his house to greet me. Unfortunately, my big truck shares Dan Gray's expression of fate. It is in sorry-looking shape. At some point after I handed him the keys, he had rolled it. Surprisingly, the accident somewhat realigned the jammed driver's side door he had smashed in the summer before. Now it opens and mostly latches securely again. Trying to push it out, Dan nods to the roof. "Just caved too deep. Sorry about that." He does not offer to pay to have it repaired. I lock the dachshund and hoist myself into the Ford. Later in the week, I will hitchhike to town and drive the elfin truck back to the mountains' lumbering feet. Keys are under the seat. Dan looks away forlornly as I slam Tank's door, then slouch down to shift the clutch of my mammoth, mutilated truck with an empty tank. At the post office, I jot a postcard to Jim. "I'm back. Can you come up?" More than someone I had hired to help me build my cabin, Jim was my friend and mentor. I hope he would find time this summer to help me shake the roof, a job that would take me all season without his muscled assistance. Unless we made unannounced visits to each other's off-grid places, we communicated through postage-stamped email. The nearest phones to our Calistine mountain homes he shared with his wife and 2 kids were screwed into cement walls or hung in glass-sided telephone booths over 10 miles away. Postcard sent, I climb into Tank and steer it to a gas station before heading to Prairie City to reconnect with other old friends. "Yvonne's back!" Annabelle yells over her shoulder as she opens the kitchen screen door and pulls me in for a hug. "Tell her to come in and have some supper," replies a voice as familiar to me as a stubble-chinned man seated at the faded Formica table. I first met Dale and Annabelle Tatton when I was building the cabin. Every board foot of flooring, every rafter, nearly every stick of lumber in my cabin was cut and planed at Dale's one-man lumber mill. As our business transactions increased, so did our friendship. Like the Nelsons, my Mormon friends, the Tattons offer non-judgmental support, care, and concern I never known after the loss of my parents. They were also the first people to call me Yvonne. Annabelle and Dale were both in their 60s when I first met them, worn by the kind of rough-hewn lifestyle that is fast to claim those of effete body and brain. They survived a depression and raised a good batch of kids. They knew their minds, how to mind their own business, how to live on and off the land without exploiting either province. To them, I am a curiosity for choosing to live a rural lifestyle they had no option to sidestep. Was born working, Annabelle said to me more than once, then detailed how all that lifting and hauling ruined her woman parts when she was young, stories later retold in my own feminine makeup. Because it is noon, an hour I've been conditioned to enjoy lunch, I accept their supper invitation. Annabelle sets down a bowl of stew dappled with potatoes and gray meat chunks. My first bite is a reminder of what I normally do not eat, but with these folks, the karma is right. Dale butters bread with a knife he holds in a hand curved like a claw, crafted by the line of work it took to cut off parts of a finger and thumb. Between bites, we catch up. When my bowl is wiped clean, I get to the point. There was a bear at the cabin last night. Dale taps the Tupperware caddies filled with instant tea, coffee, and sugar between our bowls as if to draw my attention. About a half-mile above that cabin you built, there's a cave. Bears hibernate in those rocky outcrops around it. I've been inside the loamy mouth of this cave, ringed by rusted cans and old cooking pots shot full of holes. A miner way before my time lived there. He was chiseling toward the gold vein that drew men to Canyon Mountain, the source of my creek, and a place to pan out dreams. My brother told me he once spent a night inside this cave. I didn't believe him until poking around one afternoon, my flashlight spotted an empty Jack Daniels bottle with bat shit on it. At supper that afternoon, I told Dale I was not aware the area around the cave was a haven for bears, nor was I aware that later down the line, I'd be the one eventually to keep its grave heart beating. Dale tells me to watch for ripped up stumps and windfalls, signs the bears are nosing about. I noticed these on a hike the day before, but thought nothing of it. Now I see the connection and imagine myself splayed out in strips and chunk instead of pulp wood. You got a gun? Annabelle asks, lighting the cigarette that signals she is through with her stew. I shake my head. My experience with weapons was limited to a child's BB air rifle and slingshot targeting empty soup cans and tree trunks. I wanted to keep my sights on this. Annabelle takes my empty dish to the sink, turns and says, "If you don't have a gun, then you better get a dog for your protection." I wondered if a cat would do. All right, so this is my introduction to a summer of encountering bears, which will progress as we go through Babe in the Woods Self-Portrait, which is the second book in the 3-book series. Babe in the Woods, Building Life One Log at a Time, is about when I was 18 and I built the cabin. Self-Portrait continues when I'm in my 20s, living on and off at the cabin. And Path of Totality takes you up to today. So if you've enjoyed this YouTube video, please like it, please watch it. Order the books. The books can be purchased anywhere you can buy books. And we will see you next week. Teddy, you want to come and say goodbye? No? So, summer's coming on us. Stay hydrated. Bye-bye.